Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for joining us and finding me in the ITV networks. With me again today in the studio is Sister Aziza and Sister Nadia. We had a discussion in the previous episode about the very many challenges that Muslim women face basically in terms of the academic environment, the universities, and again, if you look at the domestic politics and the role of Muslims, the state of consciousness, etc. So with that, Sister Nadia and Sister Aziza, I'd like to say to both of you again, thank you very much for joining us and welcome again to ITV.
Thank you for having us.
I would like to take this conversation a little further because I think it's very, very important. And one of the questions that I want to get straight into is, how does one understand the concept of being a Black or African Muslim? Is there such a consciousness? Should it be there, or should it rather be that we come to that state where we are all Muslim and we look beyond the color? Aziza?
I think that, yes, it is important to not to differentiate, but to acknowledge. I think Allah created us different so that we can learn from each other. So it's important to acknowledge what about you sets you apart. So I have you affirm your blackness, you affirm your Islam, you affirm your womanhood, you affirm your citizenship. So I think, yes, you do have to, affirm yourself and acknowledge that you are a Black Muslim.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's no sense of inferiority or a sense that, I'm different or whatever.
Yes, none at
so
all.
It's how you perceive it.
Yes.
Okay, and you see this differentiation as the means to identify each other, exactly as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran. And for you, Nadia?
For me, as much as it is an identification, it's an external identification. Because it doesn't say about the core of your existence. It doesn't say, who are you and what do you stand for in life? Because being Black doesn't mean you stand for something or you believe in something. It just means you're Black.
Yes, it's just
pigmentation. Exactly.
Yes.
But to get into the core of someone's existence and their being, you need to engage that person. And that's why Allah created race, and that's why Allah created nations, so that we can engage each other, so that we can know each other. Not so that we can say, oh, you're Black, you're white. There's something beyond the color that you need to engage with. So for me, being a Black Muslim, it's important, but it's not as important as getting to the core of my existence.
And I think part of that understanding also comes to the fact that although we might both see it, or all of us see it in that particular way, that it's a sense of affirmation, it's a sense of differentiation, but without a doubt, in ordinary life, race plays a part. And there is this kind of dynamics, even amongst the Muslims, where Black Muslims are looked down upon. They're considered as, the inferior class. And if you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to the Arab countries, then the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis, etc., are looked down, and they consider the inferior class. And yet that is totally opposite to what Islam teaches us. Exactly. So what do you think is necessary to take this message forward and to get people to realize that, hey guys, we're all just human?
For me, it's actually learning about somebody's Blackness, if there is such a thing.
Yes. No, there is.
Stepping into their world and not to assume that, like, okay, because you're Black, it must mean that you live in a township. A lot of people make assumptions about townships, not knowing that townships were constructed by white people to actually put a Black person in that state of mind that he is in.
Exactly.
So learn about, okay, what is your clan name? Where are you from? Oh, wow, you actually come from royalty or something.
Yes, exactly.
But you're looking down on that person. But that person, has a very rich heritage in terms of who they are. So people need to learn about where people are from, and especially if you're a foreigner or if you're not of that country, you need to learn about the people of that country.
So we need to learn our history. Nadia, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think that's very true. We we take things at face value. When we go to different parts of the world, we just think that's how people are. we don't get to the core of who are you? What do you stand? What do you, like I said, you need to move beyond the color.
Yeah.
A color, it's a racism actually, because it's a social barrier. It prevents you from knowing the next person because you already have
preconceived notions.
About that person and what it means to be in that person's color or in that person's skin.
And I think that all relates again to the whole concept of knowledge, of understanding and learning. And so I would like to play out this particular segment with a video by Hamza Yusuf where he raises some important issues about explaining the need and the importance of learning, getting an education and having a rational understanding. So we're going to play out with this particular clip and I will then see you after the break.
Gods of today are no longer Lat and Uzza and Manat and wood and all the... No, they're concepts, evolution, you see, liberty, justice, the American way, these type of things. The Marines, semper fidelis, always faithful. Semper fidelis. I mean, this is interesting. That's the Marine slogan. Semper fidelis. And fidelity is iman. That's faith. What are you always faithful to? Blind obedience. This is what they teach them. If a Marine, if they say to run up that hill, even though he's going to get killed, he's been brainwashed to where he'll do it. And then they think that our suicide bombers, right, these people that go and do this, I mean, I say are because whether we agree with them or not, they're Muslims, right? I mean, they're Muslims. Really, they're Muslims. We can't say, no, they're not Muslim. Astaghfirullah. No, if somebody says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, he's a Muslim. Whether he's right or wrong is another matter, and that's to be discussed in another way. All right, so I just want to make that clear. So, see, they say, oh, this crazy human being, who would strap himself full of bombs and go blow up, a Marine base? Well, the Marines themselves do the same thing. Only they don't do it for, trying to liberate their land. They usually do it trying to conquer another people. I mean, that poor Lebanese man that blew up that Marine base, he was just basically believing that he was defending his homeland. That's different from a bunch of Marines. I mean, what are you doing in Lebanon? Where are you from, Kentucky? Well, what are you doing in Lebanon? Oh, I'm defending, I basically got sent here. I mean, that's really what you're dealing with. I mean, so who's rational and who's irrational? This is the question. Don't be fooled. We need anthropology too. We need to study these beasties just like they study us. You see, let's get into their psychology. Let's see how they think. Why is it they don't have number 13 in their elevators? I mean, did you ever think of that? Those irrational Muslims. I've been in Saudi Arabia, there's number 13. We don't have a problem with 13. What's your problem? Let me think about that. Devil's number. Devil's number? Well, Jesus was 1 and he had 12 disciples. 1 plus 12, that equals 13. Was he a devil? I mean, seriously. See, we fall into these traps of believing all this false dialectic. Now, why? Because we don't have intellectual tradition anymore.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome to the second segment of part 2 of Finding Me in the ITV networks. With me today, Sister Aziza and Sister Nadia. And before we went to the break, we were speaking about this identity of being an African Muslim and recognizing race. But Nadia, as you said, it is beyond the external division, is looking to the inside. And Aziza, you spoke about the positivity of it, being able to affirm yourself, not to feel a sense of inferiority. And I think if you do that, you also move away from the yokes and the chains that the colonials have put onto you, isn't it? Onto these particular identities. But whilst we're looking at this concept of blackness from the external viewpoint as how other people view African Muslims, but there is also a reverse identity, and that is how African people, not necessarily Muslims, but how African people view Islam. And I mean, both of you are South African. Nadia, you Khoza. Aziza, are you Xhosa as well?
I'm Zulu.
You Zulu. Okay, so you're from the homeland of Jacob Zuma. Okay, so you both have unique experiences in terms of your culture and tradition and how the people, the indigenous African people, view Muslims as well. So I'd like to start with you, Nadia, if you can just share some of those experiences with us.
Well, I'm from rural South Africa, Eastern Cape.
Wow, one of the poorest provinces in the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
I live about 50 kilometers away from Nelson Mandela's home.
Okay.
So I grew up, I was born and raised in Eastern Cape. And, when I became Muslim, I really didn't have any difficulty trying to reconcile my Xhosa heritage and my Islamic heritage because they're not so... my cultural beliefs are not so far removed from Islam, and I'm not really a cultural person. I wouldn't say I did cultural things, but, my parents have always maintained a cultural, my father especially, he's a very cultural and rooted man. He always loved us visiting our homelands, and every year we used to go, So I realized that there's a lack of awareness about Islam in rural areas and, parts of the country that are very much impoverished. There's a lack of awareness and almost like an ignorance because Islam is associated with Indian religion, which is sometimes misconstrued as Hinduism.
Okay.
So I've been labeled as a devil worshipper, as a idol worshipper, which are things that are, far removed from Islam. They're not even allowed in Islam to be those things, So those are the challenges that I had faced as a Black African Muslim coming into a religion that was never heard of. It's very unheard of, even in educated, circles of our society. People don't know what Islam is.
And Aziza, did you find the same?
Well, I don't have any family in rural South Africa, but one thing I have encountered is that people from rural South Africa are very pure at heart.
Yes, they are.
And
that sense of Ubuntu lives in them. Yes.
So once you sit down with them, first they obviously judge you by the exterior, which everybody does.
Yes.
But once you say, do you know that, we do this as well in Islam? They say, wow. And then they want to sit and say, you know what, tell me about this God of yours. No, he's your God too. And I find it much easier to, engage with a rural, someone from the rural parts of South Africa than as opposed to somebody maybe from the urban areas of South Africa because, propaganda obviously targets the urban South Africans and
the educated ones or those who have access to material.
CNN and, so it becomes harder to engage with them because they want to engage you with your mind and not your heart. They don't want to say, oh, okay, no, I see you and I get where you're going with this Islam thing of yours. But with urban, South Africans, it's more about, but this is what Barack Obama said yesterday, so I'm going with that, and you are talking rubbish. So, those are the differences.
And I think possibly that's why we also saw the difference in reception to Barack Obama, where certain South Africans were absolutely resentful, and others like, wow, fawning and falling all over you, we love you, etc. And then it was a joy and a pride to stand next to him or to have pictures taken because it's an identity. I think it's an identity crisis.
Yeah,
where you don't really understand your heritage, and Nadia, it comes very much back to what you were saying, is that when you judge a person based on his skin. So he's a black president, so okay, so he's black, but we're not looking at the actions, we're not looking at the deeds, we're not looking at the foreign policy, we're not looking at the consequences, etc. Okay, but based on that, so there definitely is a difference between how rural Africans or South Africans respond to Islam and the urban or the educated class. What is the most common myth amongst the educated class in terms of Islam? And I'm speaking specifically about Africans now, when they look at Islam or they see Muslims.
The general perception, I think, for everyone, whether it's educated or not educated, is that it's an Indian religion. Everybody seems to have that conception that this has got nothing to do with black people.
Okay, so black people can inherit this kind of knowledge.
Exactly. It's a foreign thing, and yet they don't know that Africans are Muslims.
Yes.
They're not aware, and it all comes back to that awareness that we were talking about in the last episode, that you need to create an awareness for yourself and engage with the issues of society, because Islam is an issue. It's all over television.
Yes.
It's becoming a presence that some people fear. You know, they're
it's
like,
on
what
the
is
agenda
this?
of world politics, basically. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you need to create that awareness of what is this religion? What are they talking about when they say Muslims and Islam? You know, because if you have that mind of it's an Indian religion, you're never going to get past your misconceptions about, you know, terrorism, and, you know, you're always going to say, okay, now you're adopting, you know,
Okay, and that just brings me back to the whole understanding of what Sheikh Khalid Yasin said, is that as Muslims, we need to learn to not be afraid to say that we're Muslims.
Absolutely.
So you must be able to affirm, as you said, Aziza, affirm that I am a Muslim. Somebody asks you, I'm Muslim. Yes, I am a Muslim. Don't be afraid to say that, because there's a difference between Islam and a Muslim. There's a difference between Islam and the character and behavior of individuals who are Muslim, because Islam is the pure essence. But Aziza, I remember when I first encountered you, you were so fascinated with hijab and African identity and African hijab. So I want to come to this question now to you very quickly. We have about a minute before we go to the break. If you can tell me, what does the hijab mean to you, and do you find it demeaning and constrictive?
Oh, absolutely not. Hijab is just an extension of the commitment, I think, to the religion. But on a lighter note, hijab for me is such fun. Like, I love it, because every day I get to really come out in my personality and shine and be in love even more with the religion. So it's fun. It's really not this depressing, oh my gosh, you have to cover. It's a lot of fun. You know, if you think of, you know, you have to buy a vest and pants if you're not Muslim. But if you're Muslim, you have to buy a vest, pants, and a scarf. So that's like more shopping, I think. So it's just fun. It's great.
And you enjoy it. You don't find constrictive.
No,
okay, so we have to go to a break. When we come back, Nadia, I'd like to pick up with you. And if you can perhaps just share with us this particular thought. What does it mean to live and then to maintain your Islam? But we'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the final segment of part 2 of Finding Me in the ITV networks, today with Sister Aziza and Sister Nadia. And before we went into the break, Aziza was explaining about the beauty of the hijab and how much fun it is for her, because it is an expression of herself and her identity. And Nadia, I think you have something very positive to contribute in terms of that discussion as well.
Absolutely. Apart from being fun, I think you need to own the hijab and make it who you are. You know, it's an extension of your identity, not an extra piece of cloth or like loose clothing that you wear. It's who you are. You need to call it by your name. And, you know, whenever you describe yourself, that's how you should describe your hijab. You know, so if you're saying hijab is demeaning and constrictive, you're defining yourself. You're saying you demeaning and descriptive and constrictive. So when you say I'm beautiful, I'm modest, I'm confident, then you're describing your hijab.
Alhamdulillah. Based on that, I think for you, sharing this Islamic message was very important. And now recently you launched an organization. So I'd just like you to share, both of you played a part in that, and you had a lovely fashion show, fundraising, etc. So if you can, you know, very briefly tell us about the organization and what is the aims and outcomes from that.
Yeah, the name of the organization is Al Madina Institute for Learning and Development. And the reason why that name was sparked by how, like, you know, I thought of Medina and how it was a fountain of knowledge. You know, when the Prophet, peace be upon him, lived there, everybody came from all over, you know, to come and learn from him. So I wanted this institution to resemble the city of Medina as a fountain of knowledge where people come and they learn, you know, and, you know, they get a sense of themselves and a sense of identity. And one of our main roles is to get into early childhood development and to open up an early childhood development center, because I think the foundation of knowledge is at that age. You know, to build the fundamentals of Islam, it's important to have a proper foundation, and it's called the foundation phase for a reason, you know, because that's when you put the you know, the elements of who a child is, a sense of who their creator is, you know. So if they know Allah from that age, they're always going to know Allah, you know. That's how I learned about, you know, Allah. And apart from that, we also intend on, opening a dialogue and engaging our society and our communities about Islam, and creating that awareness, like we said.
Forming a platform in the more African areas, or
exactly.
predominantly African areas,
Yes.
whether it's urban or rural or township or whatever, because of all these myths and misconceptions and etc.
Because we're not trying to convert people.
Yes.
We're trying to offer people an alternative lifestyle, to say, you know what, this is what you can learn from yourself, and not to look at what other people are doing and follow that, because once we say, no, Islam says this, people are like, well, that's not your religion. That's not my religion, it's yours.
Yes.
But if you're saying it's better to live like this, then people get a sense of, wow, let me try that way of living.
And I love that you said, because we're not out there to convert people, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ, that it is not upon the messenger except to give the message. So you're giving the message to say there's an alternate lifestyle, there's a better way, these are the things you do, without necessarily saying that it's Islam. And that just reminds me also about, people talk about human rights and Sharia, etc., but they don't realize that all of those things that are in human rights, that are in Sharia, are basically sit together side by side, or many of those things, that speak to the same thing. But because you label it as Sharia or Islam, people automatically get afraid. Okay, so Aziza, would you like to add a little bit about the Institute and what you feel you'd like to contribute?
I think it's also about an alternative. With the Early Childhood Development Center, I think that as Muslim moms, young working Muslim moms, we need an alternative to really just send our kids to a place where they can participate.
But I think a part of that also is the role of the mosque, as you were telling me, for both of you. The mosque was very important.
Yes.
So together with a place for the children, there needs to be a place for the woman as well.
Yes.
So why is the mosque so important as well?
Because sometimes, especially with converted Muslims at home, they're not allowed to pray, or they're not allowed to do this, or and the mosque is a place where you can be free. The mosque is a place of worship and learning. So I think it's important to create a space for women to know that you're not going to be, chastised for wanting to go into the mosque. Why should you be? It's a place for you to pray and engage and meet other women and express your problems.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of this segment, and I want to play out with a video clip with Hamza Yusuf, where he speaks about the metaphysics of Salah. And because we're on the concept of the mosque, I would like you both to just very quickly, in a concluding remark, tell me, what is important for you about the Salah, and what are concluding words that you would like to leave with the audience?
My mantra in life is, this favorite quote of mine from Sulaiman Mullah, Layl tahatahlu la hayatu marira, meaning, oh Allah, I demand that my relationship with you becomes sweet, even if it demands that my relationship with the entire creation is sour. So your relationship with Allah is the most important relationship that you'll ever maintain.
And then that, of course, is the beginning of that, the building block is Salah. And Aziza?
I basically live by the term, be easy on others and hard on yourself, because most of the work that needs to be done in the world starts with yourself. And when you can look inside and correct everything, or, start step by step, that's when you'll see a difference. It's not outward. That's
amazing. So Jazakallah khair to both of you. And I think the audience will definitely be able to understand what Hamza Yusuf is saying then when he speaks about this, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that begins in the salah, especially when you start with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. But thank you once again. And to the viewers of ITV, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.